Hi, welcome everybody to Cotney Attorneys and Consultants Special Global Edition of the State of the Industry. I'm John Kenny, and today I'm going to be joined by Cotney Broderick over in South Africa, and Maria Outcombe is joining us from, we're going to say Latin America, but she's on assignment in Ecuador. So she's covering the whole continent for us there. So welcome everybody, glad to have you here today. Got a lot to go through. Just want to kind of give you a little brief introduction of who we are, so you know your speakers. Again, my name is John Kenny. I am the CEO of Cotney Attorneys and Consultants on the consulting side. I have been in the roofing industry and construction industry for over 45 years before joining the firm. My expertise is in the United States. I started in the Northeast, worked down into the state of Florida, where we're currently residing at, and I've worked with top 100 roofing contractors. So as I always like to say, just to give you my background, I've gone from the rooftop to the boardroom, so I cover everything in the aspects, and this is really an important topic to me, right at heart with all our contractors out there. Whether you're in the roofing industry or you're in the building industry somewhere, there's a lot going on in the global world today. So next, I want to jump over here to our next speaker. Cotney, I want to go ahead and let you introduce yourself to the folks.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us. I'm Cotney Broderick. I have been in the construction industry for 13 going on 14 years. That is where I started, and that is what I did while I was studying law. And I opened my own practice after I finished with my, after I was admitted as attorney. And I specialize in construction law, and arbitration is where I want to go. So yes. We like John, we also started at the bottom and worked our way right through, so we know all aspects of a project and what it entails.
Very good. Next we have Maria. Maria has recently gone from our Tampa office, and she's down working for us down in Latin America. So Maria, why don't you take a minute to introduce yourself?
So yeah, good morning, everyone. My name is Maria. I'm very glad to be here with John and Cotney, experts in the construction industry. I actually started in the infrastructure industry, which is very close to the construction industry. And I also worked in oil and gas. My experience is mostly international in that sense. But yes, I have also a lot of experience in construction arbitration, and this is it is very interesting for me to be here. I of course work right now in Latin America, so I can answer any question regarding this type of business and this continent itself.
Very good.
So very glad to
So
be here.
as you can see, we are very well rounded here at the Cotney team to bring you a global aspect of what's going on around the industry. So before we jump into it, you've been watching and following, and I hope all you out there have been doing that. If not, follow us. We've really drilled down hard on what's going on here in the US and Canada, and we worked over in the European area. We did a webinar about what was going on there. So now we're kind of trying to tie it all in. Also check us out on the, on our roof report. We cover the entire series of the World Economic Look Ahead in construction, but we're going to deep dive in some issues that really keep popping up as the pandemic definitely doesn't seem to want to go away. It's affecting us in one way or another. So, a couple of things that have come out of this that are really hot topics is, and I'm going to kick this to you first, Cotney. So what are the changes, that you've seen over there in the supply chains as far as, and also limitabilities of materials? What are you seeing going on over in South Africa?
John, I think just to give you guys a picture and an idea of how bad it was between the periods of 2020 and 2021, Stats SA actually released a report saying that the manufacturers that makes use of raw materials for supply of construction materials actually only operated at a 74% capacity. So in essence, obviously when the lockdown hit us, we couldn't get stuff from China, which is our major supplier, and the local manufacturers which did get raw materials, they actually wanted to export their stuff instead of selling it local due to the increased prices they could get for it. So this created a further bottleneck for manufacturers to give the industries what they actually needed. from there onwards, it was just disaster upon disaster. I think the industries that was most affected by this was heavy machinery, as well as steel suppliers, and cement was also a big issue on many of the projects. So what I've seen happen is that many of the manufacturers start looking at alternative freight ways of moving their materials. Instead of using ships, for instance, they started using airplanes, which makes it much quicker. And then obviously companies with new contracts, they negotiated the terms in a better manner to address delays better. I've seen instances where they've actually considered redesigning a project with alternative or substitute materials, which also helped a lot.
So just before I jump over to what's going on in Latin America, so if you give the two main factors, and let's just stick with two because I know we've really covered a lot there. What would you say were the two main causes of all of this?
Our lockdown, which stopped the imports from China, and then obviously which led to the raw materials not getting yet to the manufacturers, and then after that the manufacturers not operating at full capacity. So, and when they did supply, they only supplied to the international people globally, not locally.
Makes sense. We see that all over. And I'll kick it over to you, Maria. You know, same thing, both questions to you. In a nutshell, what's happening down there?
Well, I think that here is actually the opposite because we are actually producers of, raw materials. So in that sense, lots of production has also stopped because of the lockdowns. But still, there are lots of materials that don't actually get exported because there are no freight cargoes. There is no way to get the raw materials out. So specifically with I would say oil production it has stopped a lot, and one of the major parts of the GDP of Latin American countries is exporting oil elsewhere, right? So if we don't have the way to get the oil out, sometimes you get oil wells that are stuck and so on and so forth. And then again, there's also a big issue because we cannot import anything either because of the lockdowns and also because of the diminished capacity of freight cargoes and things alike. So in that sense, production has also stopped, and it has had serious economic consequences in GDPs as well as in the national production. There is little cement that has been used in constructions, and also because of that, construction has halted in the country, and also because of lockdowns, people cannot go to work on site, and in that sense, there's lots of delay in projects and so on.
So both aspects, South Africa can't get the material in, Latin America can't get the material and goods out. So either way, it's a supply chain issue that is pretty much stranglehold the entire world going on right now. So, what's that?
And I was saying that indeed, and even though that some industries are working, they are working at a diminished capacity, so that also has a great impact.
It does, for sure. So it's kind of what we're talking about here, right? We're getting into what extent does the impact of the shortage on vital raw materials affect the construction industry section, and also how are construction companies dealing with the shortage of raw materials and price increases. Again, I'm going to kick this over to you, Corney. We kind of touched a lot on the first part affecting it, a little bit on that, but how are you seeing the contractors, taking this whole thing in the big picture over there?
John, I think what the problem is with existing contracts, it's been a big problem because there's delays, there's costs, there's big financial impacts because the contracts never allowed for any of these delays. Employers as well. Employers want to be considerate and try and be reasonable, but I mean they can only go that far as well. They can't accept inevitable delays. So this bottleneck thing, I think there's going to be increases in the prices of materials that's being factored because of things like overtime that manufacturers are putting in now to get a bigger capacity or extended capacity. there might be even premiums because manufacturers are buying up supply stock to keep it with them, so they have supply when needed. So they're buying all the supplies up to keep it for themselves so they can be supplying. What else? It's just a disaster. Like I said, with the new contracts that's been negotiated, I think a lot of people are putting more emphasis on the importance of accommodating these kind of price increases as well as the delays that's in the contracts.
Maria?
So I think that here we're actually kind of trying to substitute things that we cannot import. So there has been lots of entrepreneurship in that sense. However, as I said, this is a new market for Latin America, this entrepreneurship that we cannot bring the same kind of, I would say, quality gadgets and also quality materials. So we're trying to substitute this by producing locally. However, it's been a challenge because there is no actual technology whereby you can produce certain gadgets or equipment locally. So that is an issue. And aside from that, there has also been lots of delays in contracts. International contractors don't understand how the local market works in that sense. So even though they're trying to be, flexible, local contractors cannot usually, comply with the international standards without having to import certain materials and gadgets that are not produced locally. And then there's also a great price increase as well. Lots of construction has also been halted again, and you cannot comply with the construction schedule, right? Because there's no way to do so. So there's lots of also contract default. And what I have seen here is that in, newly negotiated contracts, lots of, COVID-19 clauses are being inserted, which is new to the legal industry in Latin America. This is unknown to all of us.
So it's interesting how, I know we'll talk a little bit at the end. I'm sure we'll get some good questions on this, but a lot of times every country feels they're alone in this pandemic. And a lot of it's because of what we get to see on the news. It's not always a wide variety, but that's what's great about coming together and doing a webinar like this. You can see, if you're watching from the US or Canada, Latin America and South Africa going through the same pain stages that we're going through here. So it's very interesting to see that. It's definitely a global effect for sure this time. One of the few I've seen in my career that actually has been global for long term. So this is a policy that's a hot topic all over the world, and that's our between our vaccines and our government regulations on how we're going to handle resources depletions and vaccine policies and everything that's out there. So kind of open this wide open to what's going on governmental wise. Cotney, kick this to you first. So anything you want to add into these areas?
Yes, definitely, John. I think the first guidelines or legit guidelines we actually received from our government was only issued on the 11th of June 2021. It was, like I said, only guidelines. This guideline basically said, and this ties into the mandatory vaccination issue that I'm sure we'll discuss later on as well. This guideline basically says that you cannot enforce any form of mandatory vaccinations towards your resources if you have not conducted a risk assessment. And this guideline provided them an opportunity until I think the 2nd of July to do this risk assessment. And this risk assessment had to come up with mitigation measures which would justify the extreme of going to a mandatory vaccination issue. I think there's still going to be lots of issues surrounding this. We're not sure if this is constitutional, and there's very same clauses in the Constitution that might be invoked between the getting the vaccine group and then the anti-vaccine group. So to me, it seems that they're going to be tried and tested. But other than that, I haven't really seen many inputs or guidance from the government in helping the employers and the industry to move forward.
Maria?
So in this sense, I would just try to divide the Latin American continent in two sides. So we have the southern cone countries, which is Chile and Argentina, and then we have the Andean countries, right, which is Colombia, Ecuador, Peru, and Bolivia. So there is a very strong debate regarding mandatory vaccination. So there are certain countries that in fact apply mandatory vaccination because we have in civil law, there is a concept which is called state of exception. So in that sense, when you fall under a state of exception, which is like a global pandemic, which is of course exceptional in every way, the governments could actually enforce mandatory vaccination for all the population. However, as Courtney also mentioned, there's lots of constitutional rights in debate as well, whether this is legal or not, whether this can be enforced or not. However, there is the figure to actually enforce mandatory vaccination. And then I would say that on the other side, certain countries as Ecuador, they have applied massive vaccination policies whereby right now I would say that a bit more than half of the population is already vaccinated. And this has also been with the aid of with international aid, right? So the US has also donated a lot of vaccines to Ecuador and to Latin America itself. So even though the vaccination system is increasing and the vaccinated population has increased substantively, there is still a lot to go on, and there is a debate on whether employers can actually make vaccination mandatorily or not. And in that sense, there is also a very strong debate of whether your employer can actually tell you that you have to be vaccinated, but if they cannot accommodate your circumstances to either working from home or kind of a particular arrangement, they can fire you, you know? So it is a very, very debated topic, and there's still a lot to go on. However, I do believe that in the following 2 years, we will see mandatory vaccination implemented in Latin America as a whole.
Well, again, just as we united in having a pandemic problem of material shortages, construction price increases, it seems like the vaccination issue is also very similar on all continents as well. Governments seem to feel the way out of this is definitely get as many people vaccinated as possible. And again, I'm taking no political stance on this whatsoever. It's just a fact that's out there. And there are sectors of the population that are for getting vaccinations and a sector of populations that are for not. But I think no matter what the solution is, there definitely has to be a way out of this. And hopefully we, at some point, all come together with the proper solutions and move forward. I know here in the US, to kick on to the government regulations, we just currently got the order that if you're a company of 100 more employees, it's going to be regulated under OSHA mandatory vaccinations. I'm sure that's going to see many, many challenges. And if it comes out to fruition, who knows? We're watching it. I know if you want to catch up on that, kick on to some of the other stuff that Trent's put out on that. He's hot topic here if you're listening from the US. But it's very similar to what we're hearing here, which I find, I want to use the word refreshing, but it is kind of refreshing knowing that no one's in this alone. So, next thing we got here, what are some of the implemented measures that other countries, to limit international trade? So I guess we came up with this question when we were talking around, and here we're a big importer of goods here in the U.S. We've been for a long time. I know there's shortages of shipping containers, and again, I would say that almost even if here we produce we produce a lot, but we can't get some raw materials, whether the effects are. But from your aspect, and I know Maria will get to you second there as you've been great on the follow-up for Latin America. You're more producing in Corny. You kind of said that you're more, importing a lot. But on the international trade level, what's going on over in South Africa?
John, I guess most of the international trade has resumed. It's gone on, but it's definitely limited in the aspect that it's not as free-floating as it was before. And I'm not sure if South Africa really constitutes a priority country, to call it a spade a spade. So I just think the limitations that we're seeing here is more or less the same than what Maria spoke about as well. they make raw materials, we need raw materials. The amount of raw materials that we produce is not enough to sustain us, and then the cost of getting the raw materials here is also extreme. So it concerns many of the employers or the people that is actually importing the stuff, because they don't know if it's worth it to keep on importing the materials and to continue on with projects that they might just bench for a while until everything opens up again.
Yeah, a true point. I mean, it's, I think again, we'll hear the, the spirit aspect of it coming from Maria down there, but you can't get materials, containers to get the stuff out and ships but again, you talked about importing in. So, what is it overall looking at international, the view of international trade coming from your end?
So in this sense, again, I will kind of repeat myself in the first point, saying that we produce raw materials and we cannot get them out because unfortunately all the shipping points are operating at a lower capacity. So for instance, I know that Chile and Argentina's ports, which are, I would say, the major ports for shipping, are actually operating at a 40 to 60% capacity. So that is very diminishing for international trade, as well as air cargo. I would say that back in 2020, March, July, December, they were operating at least 30% their capacity. So in that sense, it is very harmful for international trade, as well as imports are very low, and we actually don't know when things are coming in or they're going out, or when are they arriving. Before, we used to say, okay, this raw material will arrive to your country in 5 to 10 days. Currently, that's not an option because we actually don't know when that's arriving. So in that sense, I would just talk about I would say products that can actually be damaged when they are traded. So I would say shrimp or fruits or flowers that we used to export them through air cargo. Currently, right now, they're just getting damaged within the country and within the continent because we cannot export them because we don't have sufficient shipping capacity to export them, right? So that has also had a great impact in the economy of most of our countries.
Yes, I think it's going to be an interesting topic for a long time to come, but we'll see how it plays out for sure. So this one we want to talk about here is, again, we've kind of touched a little bit on this, but what are the implications of the volatility in the demand and supply globally, and what will the global markets trend in the future? So I'm going to do the same thing, so I think we should look at this one. I really feel we've covered a lot of the supply volatility issues, but I think one that'd be great here to spend a second on or so from each one of you, and I'll chime in at the end, is, what do you think the global trends are going to be in the future? I mean, let's open up our spy glasses here and take a look out into the future. And here we are, almost in the middle of September of 2021. The pandemic has started 18 months ago that we thought was going to last about 4 months, and here we are. And now we're into another end of it with a lot of supply issues. So, Corney, if I was going to put you on the spot, which I am putting you on the spot, looking ahead there over in South Africa, how long do you think it's going to take before we start to see almost getting back to normalcy in the supply chain issues?
John, honestly, I don't know. In South Africa, initially when we started with the vaccination, we were scared that there won't be enough vaccinations for everyone to get going and get vaccinated. And then the government actually pitched. They gave everyone vaccinations. Now we're sitting with a issue where people actually don't want to go and get vaccinated. And I think what we've learned and what I've read is the reality is that most of your population needs to be vaccinated for stuff to even consider to go back to normal. So if this is the way that they're going to approach us in the sense extending the period where they have to get the vaccine, then I think this is going to continue long on. Businesses won't operate at full capacity. Other countries might block us because we're not vaccinated. This will only extend it and make it worse for long uncomfortable periods.
Maria?
So in that sense, I would say that there's still a lot of uncertainty because regardless of the vaccination policies that, as Courtney mentioned, are being implemented across the globe, there is still a high number of population that doesn't want to be vaccinated, and because of this, new strands of the virus are actually being created. So now actually they are speaking, I know that in the US as well, of having a third shot instead of just having 2 shots of the vaccine, but a third one. So in this sense, if we cannot operate at the same levels as we used to, there is no way that we can go back to normal. As I was saying, ports and air carriers are actually operating at 60, 50, or even 30%. So if we cannot spike those numbers as what they used to be before, there is going to be a lot of economic downturn. And I know that certain industries can take as much as what they can take. I mean, we have been in an economic crisis, I would say, for 18 months, but I have seen lots of economic downturns here because of this, because enterprises and companies can only operate up to a certain level, right? Because they're not vaccinated. However, there is also an increase in other industries that we had never seen before, right? Technology is now piking up because everybody is working from home or everybody's working remotely. So there's lots of entrepreneurship as well. So I would say that regardless of the fact that certain industries are suffering, some others are booming. So we have to be intelligent and actually invest in the industries that are actually booming right now, because I think it's also an opportunity to change the economic matrix of the world and start developing other industries that before they were unknown.
I fully agree with you, Maria. Sorry, John. I just wanted to add on to what Maria said, in the sense that what I mentioned before with the redesigning, I've seen or I read a few articles with major construction companies that are thinking of new ways and easier ways and better efficient ways of doing things by creating substitutes that's even eco-friendly. They're cutting costs in departments like not renting offices anymore. Most people working from home. They are doing prefabrication and just delivering the materials to a site. They are using 3D printing to build stuff, which is awesome. So I fully agree with you, Maria. There is industries that can adapt and should make maybe even possible to survive. But while they are struggling, there is definitely different industries that will benefit from this.
Excellent points. I'll kind of wrap up what I think about this for my 2 cents looking in the future. I think we're in this for a long time yet. Not that it's going to be good, bad, or indifferent, but regardless of vaccinations or herd immunity, the pandemic has to end before the supply issue can get better. It seems to be moving globally around the world, and it affects areas where mining. It's affecting areas of raw materials that they're not working because of the pandemic in that country. So as one recovers a little bit, one seems to be getting it. Those are issues that need to be dealt with. In a consultants group I'm in, Society for Advancement of Consultants, they have a huge wing of private consultants that are just into logistics and boats and plane travel internationally. They're predicting this isn't going to improve on logistics chains for probably 3 years. I believe that to be the case. That's not saying it's going to always be this hard, but it's not going to be solved. Now, that being said, I want to drop back on what you both said about new industries. Definitely the pandemic has moved a lot of things forward, technology-wise. It probably would have been 10, 15, 20 years down the road that you're going to see within the next 5, 7 to 10 max. I think one of them is going to be robotic workforces. If you're watching and learning and seeing what's going on out there, universities around the world are putting huge emphasis on developing robotics, more so than just the other manufactured robotics, which were robots making tools and making different things. You're going to see the human replacement of robotics. It's coming. And that's going to be how the world is going to take care of future pandemics. So again, from globally standing, I think we're going to see some huge changes. We're all going to have to adapt. You're not going to put the plug back in the well. The water's already coming out. We're going to move to a different direction. So for what that's worth, that's my 2 cents. What do you guys think about robotics coming into play in your areas?
Honestly speaking, John, I think it is developing and it's definitely going towards that way. I just think South Africa and Africa as a continent might be further behind than what the US, for instance, would be. So I think it'll take a bit longer, yeah, but it's definitely not something that's impossible for the future.
So I would say in that sense that supply chains here, at least in Latin America, are very people intensive. So in that way, replacing supply chain, like supply chain individuals and workers by robotics is a very, I would say, it's a common trend that we will see in the following years. However, there is also the downfall of what will happen with those workers that were actually working in that supply chain. So I would say that there is a dual debate, right? The debate on whether we modernize the whole industry and we make it much more efficient and profitable. But then there is the downside. The downside, what do we do with those workers and with those people that were actually working in that area? So in that sense, there's lots of social and politics developments in that sense. They're trying to educate those people to go in another areas where they can actually be efficient. However, this is a long-term project, right? I would say that this would be like in the next 7 to 10 years, but there is an actual debate on whether on actually how can robotics improve supply chain all over. And I think that there is this trend that will actually move forward in the following 5 to 10 years, but we have to see what we can do with the people that are working in those industries. And I think that that's the most heated debate, the people that actually are working there. Not whether technology will chime in, which would definitely will, but what will we do with the people that we're replacing?
Very interesting. It's kind of like anytime there's been an upheaval in the global market from agricultural to industrial to technology. But with the labor shortages that we're facing today and the threats from future pandemics, I think that the forefront is going to be to move in that direction and unfortunately kind of solve what do we do with the people later. So you got to really keep a close eye on this. We don't want to lose, as a construction industry, we don't want to lose our hands-on ability to control our industry. That's the biggest takeaway I see. Don't let someone else dictate what we're going to do. So we're up to questions now. I do have a couple questions that came through. Give me a sec here to pull them up and we'll kind of open it up to any. So are you hearing a time frame on how long the material shortage will last? I think we kind of just covered that one a little bit, but I will be happy to go out on a limb. I will tell you here what I'm hearing in the United States and Canada, and I was just on a call this morning with the European roofing market, and they're really starting to feel it more and more now. They weren't so much in the beginning, but they're not having a problem with modifieds, but the single plies are starting to become tight demand and insulation there as well. So I really think from aspect globally on the US and Canada level, covering North American segment, I think we're looking at well into 2022 in this. I don't think you're going, originally I was hoping we were going to see some changes in the first, second quarter of next year. I don't see that now. You're placing orders for materials now with a ship date of September of 2022. So I think we're actually may slip into 23 on this. Some other things globally, I think shipping is not going to improve until 23. The auto industry can't get the parts they need to do what they need to do. So I think you're going to see that go well into, there was talking about we're not going to see levels of construction based on all the world problems get back to 2019 levels until 2024. Now that doesn't mean it's going to be this painful to then, but we're looking at 3 more years to get back to where we were 2 years ago. So we got a long road to go. So anything on the material, Corny and Maria, you want to add into your end dates and what I just said?
John, I wouldn't like to specify what I think how long this will go ahead, but it's definitely not going to be before the end of 2023, my perception, my opinion.
So here I would say that material shortage would last until 2023, 2024. Hopefully, since we are closer to the US and to certain markets, we can actually improve those times by taking out all the materials we produce. However, again, if we don't have a stable policy that actually gets all of us back to work, it is almost impossible that we get there before 2024 or even 2025, because things here are a bit slower than elsewhere.
Mm-hmm. Well, one good thing, I got one more question, but I'll tap into that. So I've heard some people, they've talked to me and say, well, you know what, we get bad weather, winters, things slow down, people are canceling projects, we're going to get back to normal. But remember, that's going to have a negative effect on the overall economy. If actually people start canceling projects and aren't willing to wait and say, nope, we're done, then you're going to start dipping into the recession side, which no one's going to increase production if they don't think it's there. So we are definitely on a very tightrope situation now. We got to be careful which way this swings. But next question, last question that I have is most people don't think that one person can make a difference, but something that people can, what is something that people can do for the industry? So most people, so read it again, it's a good question. Most people don't think that one person can make a difference, which I agree with that, probably saying. But is there something that people can do for our industry? So I guess we want to look at this as, what is your opinion that as an individual in a construction industry, or as a group, or even a company for that matter, what do you think they could do to make a difference in what we got right now? So Corny, I'll kick that to you first and then over to Maria.
John, to me, the most important thing that we can do at this stage is equip companies and people working in industry with the right information, the correct information, the accurate information. Make them aware of the risks that they might face, and help them mitigate those risks.
Maria?
So in that sense, I would say that we need to be responsible with our own health and with people's health, right? So in that sense, companies can accommodate as much as they can, but they cannot stop working and they cannot stop producing, because if there's no profit, there is no work placement, right? So in that sense, we need to be responsible in how we work and what we do for the company not to stop producing. And if companies do not stop producing, the world would not stop producing, and economies will keep on booming a bit less, but in their ways. So I would encourage everyone to be responsible with their health and with everybody's health, because I would say that we're all in this together. It's not just one industry. I've seen the construction industry, the oil industry suffer a lot as well. So it's a joint effort. In this sense, I would say that not only one person can make a difference, but if we unite forces and we take this as seriously as we should, we can actually stop the pandemic from spreading and stop new strands and new forms of viruses from replicating themselves. So it's a joint effort. I would definitely say that if we are responsible with our health, things will improve, hopefully quickly.
Good points, and I'll just tap in with closing on this. We were talking about take care of your health. We talked, Corny brought up, so let's look at fiscal and health of your company. So I think what we've learned is we are a world, no matter how, if you got nothing out of this today, we are definitely a world economy that depends on each one of our other sectors to survive. There's no longer that you can just be your own economy and you're going to get out of it. It won't happen. You can see this. It's supplies coming from other areas, raw minerals, technology. We are one, wrapped up. So that being said, you individually as a group, what I would like to see do, take a look at your own business itself, wherever you're at, and you got to look at, we're probably never going to, if you get one lesson out of this, let's not make that lesson being, we'll just wait till it gets better and business as usual. No, now's a great time to reevaluate what you're doing, look at where your margins are, look at your people, train your teams, look at your expenses, what you do absolutely need, what you don't need, and you still need to invest. You need to invest in your people and invest in your company with technologies and new ways of doing things. And if you're always prepared to work under the most extreme conditions, you will accelerate to new heights under the best conditions. So that I think you can do. That's in your control. No government, no industry, nobody has control over what you really can do to improve on your internal processes and your people. So that being said, do we have any closing words? I mean, I'm good. I think I spoke enough on that. Corny, anything for closing here?
No, John, I think what you just closed off with now was brilliant, and I fully agree with Maria as well. We need to put hands together, do this thing together, and try and adapt to this. This is not going away soon, but adapt and make it better as quickly as possible.
Maria?
Indeed, the same. I was just repeating your words. We need to adapt and we need to understand that everything is interconnected and we're all in this together. Like this sounds like a UN speech, but it is true. It is true. If we don't collaborate, we're never getting out of this. And this is not going
The
away.
difference to get out of here on a UN speech, Maria, is we're no political stuff here. We're just people in different parts of the world trying to come up with a better life for everybody. That's what we're doing.
Indeed.
So that being said, I want to thank everybody for joining us today, and I really want to thank Corny for joining us. You're in your afternoon period over there. Maria, you're an hour earlier than we are here in the U.S., so we're split all over the time zone. So again, thank everybody for coming, and our special guests here with our Cotney team all over the world. Catch you on the next one. Thanks again.
Okay, bye.
Bye, guys.